Hello friends, welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So today I'm going to be dealing with some squash. As you can see here, I've got what is probably, sadly, the last of my yellow crookneck squash. And the zucchini, I've still got some zucchini happening out there, but it's definitely slowing down. So I mentioned in my most recent garden tour that I was dealing with some blossom end rot, and that generally happens because you've got a nutrient deficiency in your soil. And so I had gone ahead and fed my plants with some CalMag fertilizer, a fertilizer that's high in calcium and magnesium. It also has some nitrogen and things like that in there, but immediately after I did that, I started getting more beautiful squash. Now, this one was hidden down underneath the edge of the garden bed, covered by the plant, so it's yellow on one side, but it's not rotted, it's just from lack of light. And so we've got lots of zucchini, and of course this one got really big. It's probably got some really big seeds in there too, which, if they're fully developed, will be a good thing because I'll save those seeds for next year. Same with a couple of these yellow squash. This one might be the biggest one. And I'll save the seeds that are in here. If they're fully developed, they'll be seeds for next year. But as I said, after I fertilized the plants, they were doing beautifully. All of the new growth leaves on those plants were rich and green. The squash that I was getting had no more blossom end rot. It was wonderful. Until this week. This week, I was out there watering, doing all the things in the garden, and I noticed the telltale sign of the squash plant murderers, squash vine borers. Now, this year I did attempt to do a technique where you stake up your squash plants, where you have them grow vertically instead of along the ground. And you put in a stake and you tie the main stem of your squash plant to that stake to keep it growing up. Problem is, squash and zucchini, well, yellow squash and zucchini especially, grow so quickly that it's really hard to stay on top of that. And I tried to keep them growing vertically, but you know, you miss a day and next thing you know, you got squash vines going everywhere. And so I can't say that the technique of growing them vertically will or won't keep squash vine borers away, because my attempt to do it was a total failure to begin with. But I've got the squash vine borers. I've definitely got them in my yellow squash. I don't know about my zucchini yet. I do still have some zucchini growing there. There's still yellow squash blossoms out there, but I've already pulled out some of the plants and I don't expect I'm going to be getting much more of these. But I do have a bunch here, and I want to go ahead and take care of some of these for future meals. And so I was watching YouTube the other day, and I saw Ms. Lori over at Whippoorwill Holler doing the frozen squash patties, the discs, for fried squash. And I'm like, oh, I have not done fried squash in years. Now, I've done baked squash. I do these like zucchini chips or yellow squash chips, where you coat them in like some panko and some Parmesan and herbs and all of that. But you bake those and you make them fresh. But I haven't done fried squash in forever, and I thought that is a great idea. So that is what I'm going to do today. That's what I'm going to do with the yellow squash. Well, most of the yellow squash, like this one that's super big. Miss Lori mentioned how her husband, Mr. Brown, does not like big seeds in his squash, and honestly, I don't like big seeds in my squash. So the bigger ends, I will probably just dice those up and freeze them. And then the smaller ones and the smaller ends like this, I'll go ahead and disc them up and bread them and freeze them for fried squash in the future. So that is what I'm going to do today, and I thought I would bring you into the kitchen while I do that. I'm just tossing the scraps that I'm not going to use into the colander there, and then I'll toss them out for the chickens. Now I do have a mandolin that I could do this with, but it's not that very many squash, so I'll just go ahead and do this by hand. Alright, I'm starting to get into the seeds. You can see them there. So these for sure I will bread up. Let's see what these look like. Oh yeah, we've got full-size seeds in there. So I'm just going to set this aside for now. Throw those 2 pieces to the chickens. I'm just going to split this open. You can see how seedy that is. We don't particularly care for that. I'm just going to take my little scoop here, and I'm just going to scoop all these seeds out. The chickens will love this pulp, but like I said, I'm going to save. You can see all these seeds in here, and they look like they might be fully matured. So I'm going to take some of those out and set them aside, let them dry, and save those and potentially grow some more squash from these next year. I don't know if they're fully developed, but they look pretty close. And I think what I'll do, because I'm not positive if these are fully developed or not, is I'll go ahead and I'll let them dry, and then I'll grab a little bit of seed starter soil and throw a couple of the seeds in there and see if they start to grow. And if they do, then I'll know they're definitely viable seeds and save them over to next year. So I went ahead and I sliced up some of the squash, and I cubed up the rest of it, the bigger portions that I had taken all of the seeds and the pulp out of. Those I cubed up. I've just got them sitting in some water. I'm going to, after I finish these, I'm going to blanch those and freeze those for in soups and things like that. And the discs, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bread them. And breading for freezing and frying veggies like okra, which fried okra is the only way I like okra, I'll be honest with you. It's super simple. This is kind of a universal way of doing this. So I've got a cup of all-purpose flour here, and I'm going to add in a cup of cornmeal. It's basically equal parts flour and cornmeal. And then after that, you can just kind of season however you want to. I'll add in a little bit of salt and pepper. I am going to add in some granulated garlic or garlic powder. I use them interchangeably. I tend to like the granulated a little bit better. I think it's easier to measure, easier to use. I'm just going to add in about a teaspoon or so of the garlic. And I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of salt and pepper. Now, if you wanted to, you could leave the salt and pepper out and just add them to the squash after you've cooked them. And really, after I cook them, I may, decide they need a little bit more and add some more then. I'm just going to add a nice big pinch of salt. All right. And I'm just going to stir these all together. Super easy. I mean, you really can't get much easier than that. So I've got one of my baking sheets here. I'm going to line this with some parchment paper. And then I'm just going to take the squash and I'm just going to coat it in the breading. And I just kind of press it on there. Just like that. Now my cornmeal that I have here is actually a little bit coarse, which is not my preferred cornmeal, but it'll be all right. It's just a little bit coarse. I think when it's more fine, it sticks to the squash a little bit better. And I'm just going to do this with all of the squash discs. And then as I fill up my pan here, I'll just lay another sheet of parchment paper and just keep on going. And then once all of these discs are coated and layered on the pan, I'll just take the whole pan and I'll set it in the freezer. And then tomorrow I'll take these frozen discs and go ahead and freeze them in a vacuum seal bag or a freezer bag, probably a vacuum seal bag. I prefer to use that when I'm freezing vegetables. I think they last much longer that way. Alright, I just got done blanching my squash chunks. I'm just going to go ahead and scoop these out into some ice water to stop the cooking process. And then after they're cooled, I'll drain them and set them over on my pan to kind of air dry for a little bit. And then I will pop them in the freezer. So blanching helps preserve the color when you're freezing vegetables or fruits, and you know, it doesn't really do anything else as far as preserving nutritional value, as far as I know. My understanding has always been that this is a color preservation thing. It keeps it from discoloring, turning dark, from, you know, just the oxidation of being exposed to air. Even though I'm going to vacuum seal these, there's still going to be a little bit of air in there. And so this will help prevent that from happening. Now, if I'm shredding up zucchini, like say for the baking of zucchini bread, things like that, I don't worry about it because you're not really going to see the zucchini, and of course it's shredded, so that's not going to really do any good. And so I just freeze those in the containers like you saw me do the other day. Alright, that is the last of the zucchini. I got 8 cups. Was it 8 cups? Yeah, 8 cups of zucchini to put up in my freezer. And between this and all of the other zucchini that I froze a couple weeks ago, I've got easily a year's worth of zucchini and squash in my freezer. So it's been a struggle this year with the garden and everything. Most of you know the story of the bad soil and all of that and everything getting in there late, but I definitely got zucchini, and I kind of joked that, you know, if nothing else, the Lord must have known my body needed some squash. And so I've got all the squash I need. So now I'm gonna clean up this mess. All right, that is it for all of the squash work today. Tomorrow morning, I will go ahead and bag up and vacuum seal all of the frozen squash. The shredded zucchini will stay in their freezer containers. And while I've been doing all of that, I've actually had a pot of Hungarian goulash simmering here on the stove. So my kitchen is smelling absolutely amazing right now. If you're not familiar with this recipe, I have a video where I share with you how to make it. I will put a link at the end of this video in the little card, and you can check that out. The recipe is also on my website, of course, as usual, and I will link that in the video description down below. So that is it for today, you guys. Thanks for spending some time with me here in the kitchen. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread, and I'll talk to y'all next time.